Let's go Dolphins fans. The Jaylen Ramsey situation has taken another turn, and now a huge opportunity has arisen that could completely reshape the Dolphins' defense, but only if the front office has the courage to act. With a Pro Bowl caliber cornerback suddenly on the market, fans are excited. Could this be the move that finally fixes our secondary, or are we about to see Chris Grier fail yet again? Let's break it down. But before we continue, please hit the like button if you've been a Miami fan for over 20 years. It's great to see fans of all ages. There are people here who were at the first game. If possible, comment something like, "Let's go Dolphins." Let's look at the facts. The Dolphins currently sit on $13.7 million in cap space. But here's the twist. Once they trade Jaylen Ramsey, and yes, I said when, not if, they'll clear up to $21 million. And let's not forget, there's an emergency fund of $9.1 million they could tap into if necessary. That's nearly $40 million in available funds. So let's cut the noise about not having money. The Dolphins have the cash, and they have options. Now let's talk about Ramsey. His situation in Miami isn't about injuries or performance, it's about culture. Reportedly, he's done with the environment, with some sources suggesting serious friction between him and McDaniel. The bridge? It's not just burnt, it's ashes. So no, bringing in someone like Jaire Alexander won't change Ramsey's mind. That ship has sailed. Back to Jaire. Some fans are hesitant, pointing out his injury history. Fair point, but here's the counter. Who do we have right now? Kader Kohou? That's your big gun in the secondary? You really gonna roll with Ethan Bonner and Storm Duck when we're staring down offenses led by guys like DK Metcalf? This secondary is in shambles, and it's hard to have confidence going into the season unless major changes are made. Now star. Jaire would bring immediate value, especially if we're talking about a one-year deal worth $5 to $6 million with incentives pushing it to $10 million. Think about that. Minimal cap hit, potential high reward. And if it works, you've got a seasoned, top-tier corner lining up while the younger guys develop. If it doesn't, you cut ties and move on with minimal damage. But it shouldn't stop there. If Grier has even a shred of foresight left, he should double down. Jaire Alexander and another corner, someone like Rasul Douglas, Stephon Gilmore, or even Asante Samuel Jr. if he can pass a physical. You fix the secondary and create depth we desperately need, all while staying well under the cap ceiling. Doesn't that make sense? And don't forget, this defense isn't just about corners. We've got firepower up front with Bradley Chubb, Jaylon Phillips, Chop Robinson, and Christian Wilkins anchoring that line. If the corners can hold just long enough, this pass rush will feast. But if our secondary is weak, every offensive coordinator we face will exploit that with quick slants, screens, and curls. We'll get carved up before the front line even has a chance to breathe. You've got a window, and it's closing. Don't let indecision be the reason this team doesn't reach its potential. Grier can't afford another misstep. This secondary needs help, and Jaire Alexander could be a part of that solution. But here's the catch. The final decision isn't in our hands. Jaire Alexander has to want to come to Miami. He'll have options, teams like Minnesota, Baltimore, even Buffalo. And while we offer warm weather and no state income tax, he needs to believe in this organization's direction. So now I turn it over to you, Dolphins fans. Would you take the risk? Do you believe Jaire Alexander is worth the gamble? Should Grier go all in and add another veteran corner alongside him? Because here's the thing. If you're not willing to roll the dice on a talent like Jaire Alexander, then what exactly are we doing here? What's the plan? Grier, sit back and hope Kader Kohou becomes a shutdown corner overnight? Pray that undrafted guys like Ethan Bonner or borderline roster players like Storm Duck emerge as dependable starters? That's not a plan. That's a fantasy. And it's the kind of complacency that's kept this team from making any real postseason noise in decades. Let's not forget, this is the AFC. You've got Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert. You think any of those offenses are going to be merciful to a shaky Dolphins secondary? Absolutely not. If Miami goes into this season with the current group of corners, it's going to be target practice for opposing quarterbacks. The front seven can only do so much when the back end is leaking like a busted pipe. And here's where it gets even more frustrating. The Dolphins are actually in a position to make these moves. That's the part that stings. They have the money, the need, and the leverage. They could sign Jaire Alexander and still have enough room to add a second starter or, hell, even some O-line depth, which is another disaster waiting to happen. If Grier decides to stand pat and ride this out with what we've got, that's not just negligence. That's sabotage. Now, let's dive into the kind of deal Jaire Alexander could realistically command. Spotrac highlighted that his baseline is likely similar to what the Rams gave Tre'Davious White, $4.2 million base, incentives taking it to $8 million. Adjusted for the 2025 cap, Alexander's deal could max out at $10 million, depending on structure. That's pennies for a guy who, when healthy, is a lockdown corner. For context, that's a similar financial footprint to what teams pay for solid rotational pieces on the defensive line. And we're talking about a potential CB1 here. So what's the risk? Injury? Sure, that's valid. But every player comes with risk. Look at our own track record, Jalen Phillips, Bradley Chubb, even Terran Armstead. We live with those risks because the upside is worth it, and Jaire Alexander's upside is worth it. Plus, with a one-year deal, the Dolphins aren't locked into anything long-term. You get a year to see what he can do, and if he balls out, you re-sign him or let him walk and enjoy the compensatory pick. Either way, it's a win. Here's another angle, leadership. You think this young secondary wouldn't benefit from having a guy like Alexander in the room? A veteran who's been through playoff wars, lined up against the best receivers in the league, and knows what it takes to win, that's invaluable. And again, it sends a message to the rest of the league. Miami is not just talking about competing, we're serious about it. But let's also be real, Jaire's not going to come here if he senses dysfunction. That's why the Ramsey situation is so important. Ramsey isn't leaving because of money or usage, he's leaving because he doesn't believe in the culture. Word like that gets around. If McDaniel and Grier don't get their house in order, players talk, agents talk, and suddenly, Miami becomes a last resort instead of a first choice. So what's it going to be? Is this front office ready to be aggressive and push for greatness? Or are we going to waste another year hoping potential magically turns into production? The fans are tired, the players are watching, and the clock is ticking. I know what I'd do. I'd sign Jaire Alexander tomorrow. I'd add another proven corner alongside him. I'd fortify this defense while the market still has options. And I'd do it knowing full well that it's the only way we have a shot at keeping up in a loaded AFC. But I'm not Chris Grier. I don't make those decisions. I just ask the questions. So now it's your turn. What would you do? And before you answer that question, really think about what kind of team you want the Miami Dolphins to be in 2025. Because the window is not going to stay open forever. Tua is still on his rookie deal. Tyreek Hill is still performing at an elite level, and we've got one of the most explosive offenses in the league. But if we can't stop anyone on defense, especially through the air, none of that matters. It's just numbers on a stat sheet. We've seen this movie before, high-powered offense, a few injuries on defense, and then it all falls apart by week 10. We don't want that. Not again. Not this season. So when names like Jaire Alexander, Stephon Gilmore, or Rasul Douglas come up, this front office better not just monitor the situation. They need to act immediately, because one more year of wasted potential, one more season of watching opposing QBs slice us up while Grier sits on his hands, that's going to be unacceptable to every single fan who's been bleeding aqua and orange since Marino laced up his cleats. So I ask again, do you make the move? Or do you risk watching this team collapse in December again? Let me know what you think in the comments.